For foreigners going into China, well, if you're on the consumer side, it's very, very difficult. Because again, Alibaba and Tencent are still quite strong. And on the SaaS side, corporations in China still don't really pay for software that much. Now, in terms of the startups in China, I'd say the market has changed. I think there's a huge amount of action around pharmaceuticals, deep tech, hard tech.
What do you think are the biggest indicators of success in a founder?
I think what's really important is that they be scrappy. Being a founder is very, very difficult in that you're basically doing something that normal people would find insane.
Hi guys, welcome to this next episode of Ashley's Digital China. Today I'm bringing you another phenomenal guest. Here is William Bao Bean with us today. He is the Managing General Partner of Orbit Startups, which is the largest running emerging market startup program with $180 million in assets under management. Orbit invests in technology startups, digitizing traditional industries, and helping people make money, offering a better quality of life in a more sustainable way. Very exciting mission indeed. William, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Really glad to be here.
So, apart from being in this industry, William is also extremely famous and popular and well known in the China VC space. So, we're going to talk about investments, the future, startups, and China as well. We're going to start with this. Tell us more about your journey. How have you ended up where you ended up?
Yeah, sure. So I started off in US government, actually, trying to build bridges between Asia and the US, working for the US Commerce Department. And it was really, really interesting. It was a little bit like a very, very interesting podcast, but on 0.25 speed. It was a little slow. So I switched over to investment banking. I was an equity research analyst, and my job was to help explain technology companies in Asia to global investors, specifically American investors. So that was the start of the journey. I've been doing tech investment now 28 years. Most of that time actually in Asia. I did 5 years in the US, but 23 years in Asia.
And right now the focus is still Asia.
So we are taking 18 years of investing in China. We invested from 2002, 2003, all the way up to 2018 in China. So a lot of lessons, a lot of scar tissue. And we're bringing that to local founders in emerging markets around the world. So what does that mean? If you have a US problem or a European problem, you probably need a developed market solution. But if you're in an emerging market, you have different types of problems. So emerging market problem needs an emerging market solution for things like back in the old days in China, like cash on delivery. Well, cash on delivery is a really big thing still in Pakistan and Bangladesh and Africa. So we're taking those lessons from long ago in China and helping local entrepreneurs drive real economic transformation in their markets with China-inspired business models.
So when it comes to those lessons from China, it also probably means that China has gone through quite a transformational journey, digital transformation, right? Yeah. They have become a more developed market, probably something not only emerging markets, but also more mature markets can draw inspiration from, right? You always talk about the history lesson, right? A bit of a history lesson that you've exited China a couple of years ago, but you're still connected with the market. So tell us, how would you summarize this digital transformation in China over the last 20 years, 15 years, 10 years, and what some of the key moments, key reasons for its success that come to your mind?
Sure. I think China originally started by doing, copy from US to China. And then it was copy from US to China and then localize. And then what's happened over the last 10 years is the US has been copying from China. If you look at consumer e-commerce adoption in the US, it was 1% per year for 15 years. So 15 years into e-commerce, only 15% of e-commerce sales or total sales in the US were on e-commerce. Whereas at the same time, China was over 32%. Now, the US did catch up. So COVID drove adoption of e-commerce from 15% to 30% in about a year. But in China, it further accelerated it from 32% to almost 50% over a 2 or 3 year period. So I'd say that before it was a beg, borrow, steal, and then learn and localize for China. Now the entire world, both the developing markets and the developed markets, are learning from what's happening in China. To give you an example, if you look at e-commerce in China, a lot of it's social commerce, influencers, celebrities, key opinion leaders, KOLs is what they call them out here. They are driving sales and they're making a lot of money. In fact, influencers and celebrities in China make a lot more money on social than Americans do. And why? Well, the brands are playing ball. And in China, in cosmetics, you see the brands are willing to pay 45 to 55% of their GMV to the influencers in order to get promoted. Whereas in the US, it's more like 5 to 15%. So what we're trying to do is do what we call cross-border innovation arbitrage, which is bringing the best of one market to other markets. And we're doing that in emerging markets. And to some extent, for especially social commerce, we're doing that to developed markets as well.
A lot of the innovation around the world is done by either very established companies or startups. At some point, they kind of meet somewhere in the middle and hopefully create magic. What about China? China's been a breeding ground for startups for some time, and then something happened and a lot of foreign founders exited the market. So let's talk about Chinese startups and what has actually happened over the past, again, 10, 15 years. Do you think that foreign startups still have a place and founders still have a place in the Chinese ecosystem? And what about the local founders? What kind of problems are they solving? What kind of challenges are they uniquely meeting in that market?
So we started diversifying out of China in 2015 on the consumer side. So Alibaba, Tencent, they got really, really, really strong. And it was very, very difficult for any consumer startup to really get a toehold in the market when Alibaba and Tencent and their two ecosystems that they created around themselves had such great control. So 2015, we took our consumer investments out. Now we continue to invest in enterprise, but the key thing about enterprise is that we were funding and building SaaS products, software, enterprise software to help large corporations be more competitive. One of the challenges is that the multinationals were willing to buy the software, but the local companies were not willing to buy the software. So what we ended up doing is creating software from multinationals, and we sold it to them in China. The locals wouldn't pay, but the multinationals would. And then we ended up selling that same software to the same multinationals in different markets across Asia, and then now Middle East and Africa and LATAM. So our model is bringing the best innovation from around the world to our corporate partners around the world, including China. Now, in terms of the startups in China, again, I've been out of the market since 2018. I'd say the market has changed, but I'm more like an outsider than an insider now. I think there's a huge amount of action around pharmaceuticals, deep tech, hard tech. I also think the amount of activity has also shrunk. Before, 70% of the VC money, the money that was actually put into venture capital firms, came from the government. And the governments have since pulled back because they're going through a cash crunch, a budget crunch. So I think there's less money flowing into VCs. There's less economic development funds, and those funds are being deployed differently. So there's been a huge, huge change in terms of the amount of funding going into the Chinese startup ecosystem. For foreigners going into China, well, if you're on the consumer side, it's very, very difficult because, again, Alibaba and Tencent are still quite strong. And on the SaaS side, corporations in China still don't really pay for software that much. So we do believe that there's some opportunity to bring global startups to China. But again, it's selling to multinationals in China, helping those multinationals maintain their competitiveness in a very, very competitive market. So that's what we're helping our portfolio companies do, sell to P&G and Unilever and J&J and AB InBev.
And with all those startups having fewer opportunities and with the VC funding also shrinking and drying up, in your view, do these big Chinese ecosystems such as Alibaba, Tencent, ByteDance, maybe Meituan or whatever, do they have enough creativity, power, market share, and insight into what is actually needed to keep innovation alive?
Well, I think just because there's fewer very large players doesn't mean it's not still a competitive market, right? So, I mean, we were just previously talking about cosmetics, and Alibaba, everybody thinks they're the number one in e-commerce, right? But just in the last 2 years, TikTok, Douyin is now 1.5 times larger than Alibaba in their e-commerce sales. And that just happened very, very recently. So you have to stay innovative. You have to continually change because China is still a very, very competitive market. It's just no longer the province of early stage startups. The innovation is coming out of the large Chinese corporates themselves, like the big players. And they're still running the same playbook where Tencent or Alibaba will have 3, 5, 8, 10 teams all trying to do the same thing, all competing with each other.
Horse racing.
Yeah, horse racing. And then they'll figure out, okay, which one's doing the best, and then put the big resources behind the best horse.
And this works for China across all industries. It's quite interesting. I'm approached by an organization in Guangdong that does basically like an MCN business model where they take an expert and they popularize their content online. So you're an expert in, I don't know, recreational yoga stretching, and they turn you into a superstar in that industry. So basically they build this whole personal brand around you and scale it and create 25 accounts around this content for you. And even within that organization that does work in a specific industry and field, they take one expert, they assign 2 or 3 teams to work on this expert's promotion, and then do horse racing. It's quite an interesting way to push things forward. What about lessons learned after all these years working in China with startups, with VCs, with large organizations as well? What are some of the key lessons that you have learned about doing business there that could be applied around the world?
Yeah, so I think one of the key things that we have been focused on is how do you leverage tech to make things more efficient. Okay. So, I worked on the Alibaba IPO 2006, 2007, the first time around, and there is B2B, and then they were basically digitizing very traditional factories, very traditional businesses, and fixing the supply chain, cutting out a lot of the middle people, and making these small businesses, medium businesses, even mom and pop shops a lot more efficient by fixing their supply chain. And so we're taking a lot of those lessons and bringing them to local founders who are super scrappy, but might not have that same kind of international understanding. Now, if they read just stuff from the US, it's probably going to send them in the wrong direction because the US doesn't have SME, mom and pop, micro SME, mom and pop shops. They all got killed by Walmart a long time ago. So it's better to sort of borrow and learn from China or even India than it is from Western Europe or the US. So cash on delivery is a big one. There's India in e-commerce. You have 37% of e-commerce orders are not completed. It's very, very, very high. E-commerce is very tough. And now half of that is people who it takes so long for them to get their order delivery that they ghost, that they disappear because they have buyer's remorse. So they don't want to pay, and it's cash on delivery. So just you knock on the door and they're not there anymore. They are.
You don't open the door.
Yes, don't open the door. And then, of course, there are actual returns where it's like, this doesn't fit, I'm going to send it back. So you have to take some learnings from, China. One of them is, how do you convince people to pay upfront? Not on cash on delivery. One of our companies, because they're very, very, very efficient and they have zero inventory for their fashion, they're able to lower down the return rate from 37% industry average to 5%. And because they reduce the returns to 5%, they can actually give free delivery. And they can very much speed up that delivery. So there's a lot less buyer's remorse. People pay up front. Consumers think that they're getting a good deal because they're not paying for the delivery. It's not like copy paste. It's more like learn than localize. But we're taking a lot of the similar learnings. I mean, there's another one. There's many markets around the world where the government doesn't collect tax. The government wants to collect tax. In fact, there's like the IMF, World Bank is making them collect tax in order to get deals. They want to boost up tax revenue so the governments have some money to spend on like social improvement and things like that, and to also service these large loan packages that they've given. But if you've never collected tax, how do you get people to pay? Because generally people are allergic to taxes. They don't like paying taxes.
Especially if they've never paid it before.
Yeah, exactly. And especially since they're not getting any value for the taxes that they theoretically theoretically would pay, or at least in their mind they are not. So you can borrow from China, for example, in Taipei, Taiwan. People don't, long time ago, they don't like paying tax. So they created government receipts. And on the government receipt, on the top, there's a number. And at the end of every month, that number is actually a lottery number. And the consumers look at the lottery and match it to the government numbers to see whether they won money. So, of course, the consumers want to win money through the lottery. And so they only go to stores and they push the stores to give them proper government receipts on which the tax is paid. So in this way, the onus is not on the businesses or even the distributors to the businesses. It's the consumers nagging the businesses to give them the receipt because they want the free lottery ticket. And most people have forgotten this long, long ago. But this is how innovation was brought and solved problems that some of these countries in Africa and Latin America and Middle East and Southeast Asia, South Asia, they're encountering now for the first time. But they've been solved over and over and over again in other markets around the world, especially in Asia.
Absolutely. I remember those times. Just arriving in China in 2006, in mainland China as well, you would ask for official fapiao in a restaurant, and then you would scrap it right there, and it would say 10 yuan. So they give you 10 yuan. You don't even need to wait for the lottery. You are literally right there getting your cash back. So it was quite exciting. What about the focus of your investment fund right now? Is there a specific industry or a host of industries that you believe are going to perform very well in the next decade?
Yeah, so I think I wouldn't say we're running the copy paste playbook, but it is almost like a playbook. We have, we have the Taobao of India, we have the Tmall of Pakistan, we have the Pinduoduo of Kenya, we have the Alibaba of Morocco. We have 28 companies digitizing micro SME mom and pop shops around the world. 6 alone in Pakistan, from health clinics to car repair to like the local 7-Eleven type shop to local grocery stores. And the idea here is fix the physical supply chain, make it a lot more efficient. And we can't do it the same way we did it in China, because if we do that, we're going to end up with 95% of the rivers polluted, 1 in 3 Chinese men dying of smoking-related disease, and air pollution, we used to call it the air apocalypse, right? So the PM 2.5 above 400 is just kind of unpleasant. And if we bring that to the rest of the world, we're all going to die. So we have to make the world much more efficient and a more sustainable way. And we're just rolling that out across the world. So we're investing generally in companies that digitize business, very traditional businesses from farmers to retail. We're investing in technology to help people make a better living. And when they have a better living, they have better quality of life. From technology for Instagrammers and TikTokers, but we're also technology. We're digitizing villages in India that each have a handicraft specialty. So they might make like mugs, or they might make baskets or some sort of inlay for sale to the US. And we cut out all the middle people. The producers capture more value. The people who are selling on the other end, they're capturing more value, and we cut out the people in the middle. So on the one side, we have people who create but don't monetize. So media, games, influencers, KOLs, celebrities. On the other side, we have people who monetize but don't really have users. And then we match the two. So on the other side, we're investing in commerce. We invest in health, travel, education, and financial services. Things that you don't use every day, but do make money, match with things that you use every day, but don't necessarily make money. If you match those two together, it becomes very powerful. And our portfolio company group is like 240 companies. These companies we don't force them to work together, but we help them cooperate with each other on a double opt-in basis, where it's an ecosystem as opposed to us unicorn hunting and trying to pick winner by winner by winner. We invest in companies across the spectrum. We help them grow up in their home market. We help them go cross-border. They form an ecosystem and they kind of play off of each other. So our goal is to actually fundamentally change the economies of these markets, driven by local founders, and hopefully without the need for tons and tons of capital, because there's not that many investors that are investing in emerging markets.
That's interesting, because right now so many Chinese companies, large and small, they are looking to exit China and go into the global south and open their operations and expand their reach. and we are, let's say, building a Pinduoduo of Kenya, why would not then a Pinduoduo of China go into Kenya, and maybe not only Kenya, but the whole of, let's say, Southeast Asia and Africa, and capture the market with the existing technology, support network, etc. So the question is, do Chinese companies, in your view, have an edge when they exit China? And number two, do these local founders that are very niche, focused on their specific market, also have a chance in such a world which is dominated by big giants?
Yeah, so I would say just as big global companies went into China and kind of choked on the market, you've seen Chinese companies go global. And they've run into difficulties, whether it be local regulation, basically local companies themselves not wanting to be taken over by Chinese competitors. One interesting thing in the Middle East is they basically read the China playbook and they're playing it on China. So if you want to come in and sell to us, you have to transfer all your technology into local subsidiaries and local JVs and local companies in their markets. Otherwise, you can't sell, which is what China did to the European and American, saying you can have access to our market, but you have to transfer all your technology over. And we'll see how it works out. I think for us, we had, as international investors and backing mostly international founders in China, you had to have something we called an unfair advantage. You can't just have an advantage going into someone else's market. You have to have an unfair advantage. You have to have something that they cannot get, or else it's very, very difficult to survive. And so Chinese engineers are very strong. The tech is quite good. They've had years and years of experience iterating and competing in the most competitive, most sort of capitalist market in the world up until 2 or 3 years ago. So that's their big advantage. On the other hand, they have to understand local law. They have to understand local custom, and sometimes that's a bit of a stretch. So we tend to try and bring the China methodology and sort of like the China way to local founders instead of bringing Chinese and then helping them land. The other thing is we write pretty small checks. So that one thing that these Chinese companies do have is a lot of money. So it's very difficult for some of these companies to take our deal, the Chinese companies, because it's like, well, it's a very small check and they don't totally believe in the help. Whereas on the flip side, the local founders, they like our money, but they really enjoy the help through our lifetime support program, through our sales and partnership team of 10, through our fundraising team of 10 people on our team, and 550 mentors that volunteer their time to support these local founders around the world.
And when it comes to helping the founders, you've just mentioned that you've got quite a lot of support network. So you help them with acquisition strategies, user acquisition, and ultimately partnership acquisitions. So what is your pick on doing business through user acquisition strategies that work today in 2024? What can we all learn from China or from any other market?
So for us, we have a 10-person partnership and enterprise sales team on our team, and we try and flip it around. So most of the time, when you're a startup and you try and sell into corporate, you're like spearfishing, and oftentimes you're spearfishing into a mud puddle. It's like dirty water, and usually you're hitting rocks and you're just making your spear blunt, right? So what we try and do is flip it around, and our team, instead of working with the startups and trying to push in, we actually work with the corporates. We talk to the corporates all the time. We see, what do the corporates want? What do they need? What are they looking for? What are they willing to pay to solve? What are the challenges that they have budget to solve for today and tomorrow? And then where there's a fit, we'll pull in the startup. And this just accelerates the sales process. Because when you have a startup that is serving a need that's already identified, where there's a person in charge and a budget associated with it, it just makes things faster. So that's B2B, enterprise. And then we don't do B2C so much, because we don't believe that spending lots of money on ads in order to try and get users and then trying to monetize those users, it doesn't really work particularly well in emerging markets. You have very negative ROIs until you get very, very big. And since we're writing small checks, we need to do things another way. And so we help our companies partner with each other and then partner with our corporate partners to try and help them solve for user acquisition. So one thing about telcos and handset brands all around the world is they have lots of users, but they want to make more money. And we have apps that are sticky or make money that are in search of users, and then we just match. And in this way, become a win-win-win telcos, handset brands happy, startups happy. Because the telcos and handset brands, they get profit share, they get revenue, and the startups get user acquisition without having to pay for it. And so this is sort of a China-based profit share model as opposed to a Western-based media model. In the West, you pay for advertising, and then you keep all the revenue. Whereas in China, traditionally, at least when I used to be there, you get the user for free. You don't really have to pay for advertising, but then you do have to spend a lot of time engaging with that consumer, but then you profit share to the platform where the user is sitting. So it's a more profit share model. And so we think that going forward, the world outside of China will be a bit of a mix of the two, but we're doubling down on the kind of the profit share model.
Yeah, and in China, they've built quite an impressive social commerce because they were able to leverage private pools. They building real relationship with the customer, and pay-per-play is very expensive. Every time eyeballs cost more and more, and large platforms want to basically squeeze everybody in between. But in China it works, and right now there's quite a bit of success also in Africa with this direct-to-consumer model that we can read about as well. What about scaling challenges?
Yeah, so I think in the beginning, you always hear this thing, don't do things that scale, right? In the beginning. So we look at it as steps. What you do in 0 to 1 is different than 1 to 10. It's different from 10 to 100. And each time you have to get back to positive unit economics. You have to get back to positive ROI. Not only that, but we're helping our companies go cross-border. So we're helping our companies do it in multiple markets. So it's quite a lot of work. Okay. The challenge is that the companies can't just sort of sit there and relax. They have to keep on iterating. First in their first market, and then market after market after market after market. It's pretty intense. And that's why we really focus on the word scrappy, because they are always changing. They're always changing. They can't just sit and relax. The goal for us is to be there and help them with it. So we try very hard not to tell those founders what to do, but we try and help them design the experiments, run the experiments, interpret the results of the experiments, and then drive the next experiment so that they can get from where they are to where they want to go. And it's working. Like we have a lot of companies where we help them first digitize the physical supply chain for these mom and pop shops. Okay, so they cut out a lot of the middle people, 20% more money into the pockets of the mom and pop shop owner. And so there's a trust, there's a bond between the platform and the mom and pop shop owner. And these mom and pop shop owners, they have local trust with the 50, 100 families in the community that they're working with. And this is the same thing that Alibaba had in China back in the day. Well, now it's in Pakistan and Morocco and other markets. So that's the first step. But once you have that trust and they're making money and they're happy, well, then you start the next stage, which is, can you introduce digital products and services for that mom and pop shop to sell? So not just physical sales, but also digital sales. So in India, we're selling digital savings product, digital gold. In Pakistan, we're selling a health membership. It's basically health insurance, but they don't really know what insurance is. So it's more like a membership. They pay in and their family gets covered. And this is basically a digital product. It's $5 a month or something for a family. So we're layering it on top bit by bit by bit. And then the next step, more financial services, transportation, like commuter transportation. We have a company in Pakistan doing it. We have a company in Africa doing it. All around the world, getting to and from work is very expensive. Taking that same type of traditional ride sharing, but then that we have in China, we have a company called Panda Bus doing it. And then bringing that to other markets, where there might not be subways, but they have buses, they have cars. You want to bring down the cost. You want to do, you don't want one person and one driver per car. You want 4 people plus the driver per car. It's a lot more efficient. It's also safe, especially for markets where, women are worried about, personal safety. In many markets, that's a challenge. So these are very, 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 very basic services that we're digitizing. And even in markets where you think, oh, wow, it's low income, they don't have very much money. Like Bangladesh, consumer spend $300 billion. That's it. It's almost nothing. But 97% of that $300 billion is going through mom and pop shops. And so if you digitize them all, it actually can become quite an interesting market and a huge opportunity. And we think, once there's a couple wins, global investors will come in.
And scaling itself, how shall founder or a company, in your view, approach it? Is there a certain mindset? Is it a market push because you only grow with the market? If Bangladeshis start spending more money than you grow with the market, you need to be kind of ready. So how to actually go through that scaling?
Well, I think the idea is that if you're putting 20% more money in the pockets of the store owners, it's impossible to stop. So, I mean, in these markets, there's been a lot of turmoil. You have political unrest, you have floods, you have, devaluations of currencies, inflation, all sorts of stuff. But you're solving a very fundamental problem. You're cutting out middle people.
Yep.
And or middlemen or whatever. And so if you can do that, you just see growth. I mean, some of these companies are seeing 5, 10, 15, 20% month-on-month growth, unfunded, profitably, because they're solving a fundamental problem. Again, the idea here is try and figure out how to get it to positive unit economics first, then scale. It's not, you don't scale something that's not there yet. So we think that the time to do something called blitz scaling, which is throw a bunch of money at something and grow it, in emerging markets is almost never. So there is a time to do it, probably in more developed markets, more stable markets. But in emerging markets, it's generally not something that you want to do.
Yeah, let's talk about sustainability.
Yeah.
You've touched upon it a bit earlier. Sustainability is such a big fundamental topic. Everybody from governments to large corporations to consumers are talking about it. And in emerging markets, sustainability might or might not be a very impactful topic. As you said, if we scale the world, digitize the world, following, for say, the China model, then likely it's going to have a huge impact on our planet and our common well-being. So how to do it differently?
Yeah, so I think one of the things we're borrowing from lots of places, but we're borrowing heavily from China. So when China, first, had this whole new concept of smartphone, they used to take secondhand used smartphones from Europe and from the U.S. and then ship it to China, refurbish them, fill them full of apps, and then sell them. And the company would make money on the phone, but they also would make money on charging for preloading apps in the phone before they sold them. And then, of course, you're familiar with Xiaomi, did the same thing with new phones. So around the world, we're just doing the same model. So we have a secondhand smartphone company, one in Indonesia, one in India, one in Middle East, one in Sub-Saharan Africa. And we're actually selling secondhand smartphones in Carrefours. It's a thing. But we're doing it the China way. So we're making 10 to 15% on the hardware sale. So you get the secondhand phone now actually from China or from Asia. You analyze it. The components that are going to probably break, you recycle them. You're being green about it. You replace those. You put a 6-month warranty on it. And then we're preloading those phones with apps from our portfolio companies. Those apps and services get users for free, but they give profit share back to the phone company, similar to like a Xiaomi type model. Again, it's profit share. So free promotion, but profit share. And what makes this green is, you have a phone that normally would have a 3-year lifespan, and then now it's got a 6-7 year lifespan because it's got 2 owners in 2 different markets. And on the other side, it's great because you have low income people who are able to get a functional working smartphone at a much lower price. And once they have that smartphone, they can get jobs. Like they can get a job doing ride delivery, or economic opportunity opens up massively when you have an access to a smartphone that actually works. So it's a sort of a win-win-win sort of a way of approaching things. It's very similar to what we saw in China 10, 15 years ago.
What about emerging tech trends? I know that you are also investing and curating a lot of technology and innovation, let's say in AI, video editing tool that you've mentioned earlier today. What are the spaces that you're watching? What are the things you're excited about? Are there any surprises on the horizon for the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're really focused on is how do you leverage technology to help people make a better living, right? And there's a lot of different ways to do that. One thing that we think is quite interesting, this whole sort of cross-border. So we have people from Asia, but they live all around the world. Filipinos live all around the world, working all around the world. We have people from Malaysia, from North Africa, half of the Middle East, 50 million people. Some are rich, some are guest workers from abroad. Right? And so how do you serve not just the rich people, but also the people who are visiting from around the world? One of the things you see in Philippines is people go away and work and they send money home, and then they come visit for 3 years later and they're like, where's all the money I sent? what happened to the roof? What happened to the refrigerator? Why aren't the kids in school? So I think there's a huge opportunity in terms of those cross-border relationships where you have people working in one market, sending money back to their home market. Another huge opportunity, we believe, is investing in services and goods and platforms to serve underserved communities. And one of these underserved communities is Muslims. There are 1.8 billion Muslims in the world. We don't think that there's too many people developing tech to serve this particular cultural group. So if you think about it, food, halal food, it's a very big market. People spend a lot of money on food all around the world, and you need to have it be observant. You have travel, and travel that people go on pilgrimage from Southeast Asia, where we invest, from Africa, where we invest, and through to the Middle East. So we think there's a big opportunity in travel, especially around pilgrimage, but also even tourism, and then commuting. Again, we want to be able to get to work in a safe, efficient way. So Muslim men, Pakistan, or basically people in Pakistan, white collar men spend 10% of their income commuting to and from work, whereas women spend 30%.
Ooh.
Yeah, so they need to have safe, secure, and hopefully more efficient and less expensive travel. And so we recently invested in a company that they just won Meet the Drapers Pakistan edition, Bascaro, and they're solving this problem. And that's not the only company we have solving this problem. We have similar companies in Africa solving the same problem. So you have that travel. And then finally, you have fintech. So culturally sensitive, religiously sensitive financial services. We think that's also a huge opportunity. And again, it's global. It's Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Malaysia, North Africa, and of course the Middle East.
Beautiful. And it would be also very interesting to serve those communities or minorities through, for example, entertainment, right?
Yep.
Health. Education.
Yep.
Right? Once you understand what that community, which is 1.8 billion, you said, Muslims in the world.
Growing.
And it is growing, that probably need, interesting spin on entertainment, a slightly different spin on healthcare, etc. It's a very big market.
I'm not sure we're going to be the ones investing on the entertainment side, but we're doing some basic stuff. Basic stuff, yeah.
Very cool.
Sports, maybe.
Sports, perhaps. For so many years, you've worked with entrepreneurs and you've seen them succeed and fail. What do you think are the biggest indicators of success in a founder?
Yeah, I think what's really important is that they be scrappy. I mean, being a founder is very, very difficult in that you're basically doing something that normal people would find insane. So you're doing something that's not been done before. You're burning up all your savings. You never see your family. You never see your friends. You don't exercise and you don't sleep. You go personally bankrupt, and then you fail over and over and over again.
But you keep going.
Well, yeah, you keep going, and then hopefully the idea is what we do is we help them do it in groups. We help them have people around them going through the same thing, because one of the challenges is the journey is very, very lonely. And you need to be able to bounce ideas off of other people. Because if you keep on doing the same thing, expecting a different result, it's not going to happen. So I did a couple startups. I wasn't very good at it. I was a bad CEO. I think that what we're trying to do is what I'm better at, and what our team is quite good at, is putting support infrastructure and service and help around founders through this journey. And so, I mean, we started the first accelerator in Asia. We started the first accelerator startup education program in an emerging market in the world that's still running. Now it's a lifetime program, so we don't really call it an accelerator because it has no end, and an accelerator has an end. But what allows us to help drive success is we kept on iterating ourselves. We kept on changing what we do. It was originally a 3-month program. And then after I joined in 2014 full-time, because I was a volunteer mentor before, full-time 2014, soon after we made it a 6-month program. And we had better results. And then fast forward to before COVID, we made it lifetime support. So this sort of continuous iteration and this sort of scrappiness paired with support, and also just a kind of like our ecosystem approach, where the companies, on a voluntary basis, they're actually trying to help each other. We think that this is a model that you're going to see that scale that you were talking about, scalability and repeatability.
And have you ever met a person, a founder, be it, or a CEO, and you would say, okay, this person has all the recipe for success. This person is like resilient or charismatic. Like, do the founders, because we hear all those things, right? You need to be resilient. You need to be charismatic. You need to be a visionary. You need to be a lot of things. So do you actually think that there is a recipe for a successful founder?
Yeah, I
or
think,
is it, as you said, primarily the network and how supported you are, and a lot of it is mindset, and a lot of it is really just going for it in the right group of people?
Yeah, so I think it's one of the most important things is it's not just a founder. So there's product, there's tech, and then there's sort of sales, and those are the three roles. And usually people are good at one or not good at all three, right? So having somebody who's working with somebody else who is better at them than something that they're not so good at, and vice versa, and they work together as a team, that's kind of like the recipe. So it takes more than one.
Focus on your strength and let other people do all of the other things.
Yeah.
What is one question I haven't asked you today that I should have asked you?
Oh, so I would say, how do you balance? Yeah. So
How do you balance?
the challenge is that I don't really balance. Unfortunately, we're not so balanced. So I wear this thing and it tells me to go to sleep, and I pay. Basically, I think it's like $1 a day, and I pay $1 a day for my app to tell me to get more sleep. So I think what's important for all of us is to be able to do things that are not work. So find a hobby, or make sure that you're not killing yourself. Sleep. Do something that's not on your phone. So for me, I try and spend time with family, not always successful. I try and sleep. I set alarms to wake up, but I also set alarms to go to sleep. And then for the last 2 years, I've been traveling about 10 months out of the year. And I brought my own little kitchen with me in my suitcase. So I got a South Korean dual voltage induction burner. And like a little 2 cook pots and a little cutting board and a little knife, some spices, little squeezy bottles of like olive oil, sesame oil, Chinese black vinegar and balsamic vinegar and whatever. And just used to cut up lots of vegetables in little tiny pieces on the weekend, because if you're focused on your company while you're chopping vegetables, you'll end up chopping your fingers off. So you actually have to focus on something else other than your company, or other than your challenges, other than your problems. I mean, health's important, and my cortisol levels are a little high, so need to focus on bringing that down. Fight or flight is like basically stress level. So it's a marathon, not a sprint. The person who gets to the end first is not necessarily the winner, right? They're dead. So try and enjoy the journey. Try and balance, do what I say, not what I do, because I'm not that balanced. But hopefully, after we're done closing our third fund in a few weeks, I'll take some time to not travel so often to so many places.
The balance is extremely important. Being a founder, being a professional in today's world, when things are changing so fast and the whole world is moving so fast, it's a great reminder. Thank you so much, Will, for today. What is the best way to contact you?
You can follow me on LinkedIn. It's a little hard to friend me on LinkedIn. If you want to send a message, actually Twitter's not that bad, or X, or whatever they're calling it, because nobody uses it for messaging. So that's not that bad. We also have a newsletter. So if you go to orbitstartups.com, you can sign up for our newsletter. And then we have events like, coming up, we have some events around GITEX in Dubai. And a great way to get in touch with us is to actually go to one of our events across Asia or in the Middle East or US. So we have events all around the world.
Yeah, guys, do that. Thank you so much, Will, for today. Guys, stay tuned for more Ashley's Digital China episodes to come. And today you have learned about China's digital transformation in the context of VC startups and bringing all those learnings and lessons to the rest of the emerging world. Stay tuned and have a great day.